We were on our way to a family reunion when my husband suddenly went pale and whispered, "Turn the car around. Now." I froze behind the wheel. "What? Why?" "Please, just turn around." Something in his voice made my stomach twist. I didn't question him again. I trusted him, and that decision ended up saving us. Because once I learned the reason, I could never look at my parents the same way again. The trip had been meant to be simple. Leave early, toss snacks in the back seat, keep coffee up front, drive a few hours, cross the border into Canada, greet relatives I hadn't seen in ages, and pretend to enjoy the usual potato salad. It was supposed to be ordinary, maybe even dull, and honestly, that was the dream. I was the one driving, as always. Mostly because my husband brakes like it's a sport, and because motion sickness is one of my many gifts. The kids were half awake in the back seat, half watching cartoons, half bickering over invisible boundary lines across the seat cushions. 3 little whirlwinds, aged 5, 7, and 10, each wearing a matching neck pillow like a tiny badge of chaos. It was all fine. Not great, not terrible, just comfortably fine. Until he said those words. "Turn around, now." At first, I didn't take him seriously. Maybe I smirked or let out that awkward little laugh you give when you think someone's joking, but not in a funny way. "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on the road ahead, his jaw tight. Then he repeated softly, "Please, just turn around." That's when I knew it wasn't a joke. My husband doesn't do fear. His usual modes are calm, and sometimes tired. I'd seen him put out a kitchen fire without even flinching. But this was different, so I took the last exit before the border. The ramp curved gently away from the highway, like the road itself was giving me a chance to make a different choice. As soon as we left the main road, I saw the tension ease from his shoulders, not completely, but enough to tell me he'd been bracing for something. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You want to tell me what's happening?" He shook his head. "Just drive." "Drive where?" "Anywhere but there." The kids were starting to pick up on the shift. "Mom, are we going the wrong way?" my middle child asked. "We forgot something," I said quickly. "What did we forget?" "I'll explain later." The youngest piped up with perfect timing. "Is it the snacks?" I didn't answer. My husband stayed silent too. For a long time, the only sounds were the hum of the tires and my heartbeat pounding faster than it should. 20 minutes, maybe more, passed like that. Nothing but trees sliding past the windows and the heavy weight of unspoken worry pressing on my neck. Then he finally said, "Take the next turnoff." It wasn't really a road, just a narrow dirt path, unmarked and leading to nowhere. The kind of place you only find when you're either lost or not supposed to be there. Still, I followed it. He unbuckled his seatbelt as soon as we stopped. "Stay here." He got out and went to the back of the car. I couldn't see him through the mirror, so I waited, palms slick with sweat, heart racing in a rhythm that felt wrong. Fast, heavy, expectant. A minute later, I heard the trunk close. He walked back to my window. "Can you step out for a second?" "Why?" "I need you to see it." He didn't sound scared. Not angry either. Just tired and absolutely certain. I climbed out, nerves buzzing. He led me to the back and opened the trunk. He didn't explain. Didn't need to. He just pointed, I looked, and forgot how to breathe. It wasn't fear yet. Fear was still somewhere behind me, running to catch up. What I felt was slower and heavier, like the ground had opened under me and I was falling straight through my own life. I didn't touch what I saw. I didn't have to. I just knew, whatever it was, it meant we were one wrong move away from losing everything. The strange part? I'd always thought I was the responsible one. Not just in the pays bills on time and wears sunscreen kind of way, though that too, but in the sense that I believed I could hold things together. That I could be the steady one, the helper, the one who didn't lie or break or disappear when things got hard. But looking back now, really looking, I can see that being the responsible one in my family was like being the designated driver at a demolition derby. You might stay sober, but you're still surrounded by the crash. They never wanted help. What they wanted was a disguise, And for years, I unknowingly gave it to them. It began when I was little. My parents were the type who believed that living well had nothing to do with money and everything to do with appearances. To them, image was everything. If your house looked tidy, if your smile looked sincere, if the Christmas lights were perfectly straight and your refrigerator boasted 5 kinds of mustard, then you were doing fine. It didn't matter if the bills were overdue or the gas had been shut off that one freezing winter. We were doing fine. That was the family script. Either follow it or be written out of it. Some years were lean. I remember nights when dinner was cereal and excuses, and one parent or the other suddenly working late, which I later realized was code for "we can't let you see how broke we are." Other years, money flowed freely. New cars, big screen TVs, fancy patio sets nobody actually used. The pattern was always the same. The spending stayed constant. Only the bank balance changed. Once I asked my dad why we didn't save when things were good. He told me, "You don't need savings if you know how to hustle." I was 8 years old. My sister absorbed that lesson completely. She inherited their charm, their shine, that magnetic ability to make everyone feel special while quietly draining the energy from the room. She was their favorite, and it wasn't even a secret. They just understood her. She was one of them. I wasn't. They called me boring. Sometimes as a joke, sometimes not. My mother once looked at me across the Thanksgiving table and said, "Your problem, dear, is that you confuse discipline with personality." The cruel thing is, I believed her. Growing up in a family like that teaches you something dangerous, that love has to be earned through usefulness, through neatness, through being the one who never explodes or breaks. So I did what I thought was right. I became the reliable one. Whenever there was a mess, I was the cleanup crew. They'd call when they needed help with insurance forms or school paperwork, or when my sister lost yet another job and someone had to bridge the financial gap. I gave what I could. Never too much, but just enough to keep things from collapsing. Just enough to avoid being labeled the selfish one, even when it hurt. Even when every no I said turned into a guilt trip. I still gave, because they were my parents, because it was easier than fighting, and because I didn't yet understand that enabling someone is just another form of surrender. Then everything shifted. It started about 4 months before that trip. My sister's son, my nephew, was having a hard time at school. They said he was being bullied, struggling to fit in, anxious and withdrawn. They'd had him evaluated, and apparently a therapist recommended a smaller, more structured environment. They'd found a private school, selective, prestigious, and, of course, wildly expensive. In their words, it would be life-changing. They couldn't afford it, obviously, but they claimed they'd manage to get him conditionally accepted if they paid a deposit quickly. They just needed a little help, just enough to lock it in. They promised to pay me back. The moment those words left their mouths, I felt the old weight drop into my stomach. Not because I didn't care, I cared deeply. I love that kid. I wanted him to have a better chance than any of us did. But I also knew the script by heart. I'd seen how these stories ended, so I said no. I said it softly, the way you'd speak to someone holding something fragile. I can't do that. I have 3 kids of my own. We don't send them to private school. I'm sorry, they didn't argue. They didn't even raise their voices. They just went still. Cold. My mother finally said, "Of course. I forgot. You have rules." After that, silence. We didn't speak for weeks. Then came the reunion. Suddenly, they were cheerful again. Excited. They'd figured things out, or so they claimed. The school situation, the travel plans, everything. It was all conveniently working out. I didn't ask how. I told myself it wasn't my place. A few days before the trip, they called one last time. Their car, they said, was packed too tightly. Would we mind taking an extra bag in ours? We had the bigger vehicle, after all. Sure, I said. Just let me know when, and that was that. Or at least, that's what I thought. The morning we were set to leave, while we were loading the car, my father handed me a red duffel bag. "Won't fit in ours," he said casually. Just take this one. I didn't think twice. I tossed it into the back with our luggage, the kids' backpacks, and a cooler packed with juice boxes. I didn't unzip it. Didn't question why my parents, who only weeks earlier had been drowning in bills and guilt-tripping me for not rescuing them, suddenly looked so at ease. They stood in the driveway, smiling and waving as we backed out. Relaxed, cheerful, almost glowing. For a fleeting moment, I thought, that's strange. They looked happy. Genuinely happy, but I brushed it off. Just another trip. Just another piece of family baggage I didn't want to unpack, literally or figuratively. Maybe I should have asked questions. Maybe I should have noticed more. But I didn't. Later, when my husband asked me to stop the car, his voice had that same calm certainty that always makes me listen. I need you to see something, he said quietly. He didn't sound angry or frightened, just exhausted and absolutely certain. I stepped out. He guided me to the back of the vehicle and lifted the trunk. Without a word, he unzipped the red duffel and pushed a sweatshirt aside, and the world stopped, tucked between layers of clothing. Packed inside what looked like a child's toiletry bag and wrapped in plastic were packets, dozens of them. Not hidden well, barely concealed at all. Anyone checking would have found them in seconds. I stared, confused for a heartbeat. Then it hit me, all at once. These weren't vitamins, not medicine, nothing legal, nothing innocent. The kind of thing that came with handcuffs, lawyers, and headlines. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. My chest locked tight, every muscle frozen. It felt like drowning, but slowly, in air too thick to breathe. My husband didn't say, "Look what they did." He didn't have to. He zipped the bag closed again, letting silence say the rest. I took a step back, gravel crunching beneath my shoes, the sound oddly distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. "They put that in our car," I managed to say at last. My voice barely there. He nodded. "With the kids," I whispered. Another nod. For a second, I looked up. The sky was still the same, bright, cloudless, beautiful. It made me furious. The world looked too normal for what I was feeling. "How did you know?" I asked finally. He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the closed trunk, like he could still see through it. "When they gave us the bag," he said at last, "something about their faces. The way they smiled, it was too easy. Like the plan was already done. Like they knew it would work." He shrugged, then shook his head hard, as if trying to shake the memory loose. I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind as we drove. Every glance, every word from that morning. And then, just before we would have reached the border, it hit me like a cold wave. He looked at me. I didn't know what to say, but somehow I understood. And that made it worse. That someone else had seen what I'd spent my life training myself not to see. I walked back to the driver's seat slowly, got in, and shut the door. I sat there for a long moment, hands trembling, the sunlight bleeding through the windshield until the heat felt suffocating. Then I started the car. The kids didn't ask where we were going this time. They were absorbed in a cartoon, giggling softly, oblivious to the storm that had just passed over their lives. Canada was forgotten, so were Aunt Karen, the cousins, and the little gift bags I'd packed for the reunion. We just drove, highway, back roads, anywhere that wasn't there. My phone started buzzing after a while. First Mom, then Dad, again and again. The same names flashing across the screen like a heartbeat I didn't want to hear. Neither of us picked up. We didn't have to. We already knew the script. Where are you? What happened? Are you okay? Where's the bag? We ignored every call, letting the silence answer for us. The screen kept lighting up, a small, persistent reminder of everything we'd just escaped. Eventually, without a word, we turned down the familiar road toward my parents' house. It felt automatic, like we weren't even deciding, just following some invisible track laid out long ago. We didn't talk. There was nothing left to say. We both already knew what needed to be done. When I pulled into their driveway and parked, The porch light was still glowing from the night before, even though daylight poured over the house. He stepped out first, walked around to the trunk, and I followed without a word. I lifted the mat and reached for the spare key, still taped behind the same fake rock my dad had once ordered from a mail catalog that also sold deer whistles and solar frogs. He unlocked the front door, and we walked inside. The air carried a mix of stale coffee and cheap carpet cleaner. We placed the red duffel just inside the hallway, didn't unzip it, didn't shift it, just set it there like a silent weapon that didn't need to explode to destroy everything. He turned the knob and locked the door behind us. Still, we said nothing. Even the drive back home was wordless. It felt like speaking would taint the quiet, make everything too real. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house had fallen into that heavy, fragile stillness, the phone rang. My mother's voice came through bright and brittle, the kind of cheerfulness that cracked at the edges. "Oh, honey, we were so worried. You just vanished. We didn't know what to think." I said nothing. "Is everything all right?" She pressed. Still silence. "Where's the bag?" I let the question sit in the air before replying. "We dropped it off at your house." There was a pause, long enough for her to understand what that meant. Then I added quietly, "If it mattered that much, maybe you should have handled it yourself." Her tone didn't change, but I heard it. The hitch in her breath, the faint tremor that told me she knew exactly what I was saying, and that I knew exactly what she'd done. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then I said, "We're done with this. Don't call again." And I hung up. No shouting. No dramatic farewell. Just a clean break. A door closed with finality, or so I thought. They came on a Wednesday. No text, no warning, just the doorbell ringing like it was a casual visit, not an intrusion laced with guilt. I knew it was them even before I looked. There's a pressure that seeps through a door when the people on the other side carry denial instead of remorse. I opened the door just wide enough to step outside, closing it firmly behind me. My parents stood there acting as if they hadn't just tried to implode my world with a smile and a duffel bag. My mother offered a forced, polite grin, the kind meant to seem kind but never reached the eyes. "We wanted to check in," she said lightly, as if this were a friendly update and not a reckoning. My father added, "We thought maybe we could clear the air." I folded my arms and stayed silent. My mother hesitated, then said, "We didn't realize how much you actually knew." There it was, the confession disguised as confusion. They knew, I knew. The only mystery left was how much of their betrayal I'd let myself accept. "You mean the bag?" I asked. Neither of them spoke. That was answer enough. "You put it in our trunk," I said flatly, while your grandchildren sat in the back seat. My mother swallowed hard. "We didn't think it was a big deal." "It wasn't going to be anything," my father said, trying to keep his tone calm. "Just a way to help with the debt." "We were desperate," my mother added quickly. "You wouldn't help." There it was again, the same excuse, polished from overuse. "You wouldn't help." As if my refusal to fix their mess justified endangering my family. As if betrayal was simply cause and effect. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. "You didn't just betray me," I said quietly. "You put all of us in danger." Neither of them spoke. "You risked your daughter." "Your son-in-law? Your grandchildren?" My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother blinked as if trying to force out tears that wouldn't come. "This is it," I said. "Don't call. Don't visit. You're not seeing the kids again. We're done." Her mouth opened, and I could already predict the script. "You're overreacting." "You'll calm down." But instead, she simply smiled thinly and said, "You'll come around." "You always do." I turned away, walked back into the house, and locked the door behind me. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't question whether she was right. 3 days later, I drove to the school to pick up the kids, but they weren't there. My stomach dropped so sharply it felt like gravity had turned against me. I just stared at the teacher, unable to speak. "Oh, they were already picked up," she said casually, as if she'd just mentioned the weather. Your parents said you asked them to. Everything after that blurred. I remember being in the car, the hum of the engine, but nothing else until I pulled into my parents' driveway. Of course they were there. Inside looked like a toy store had exploded. Balloons, candy Lego sets that cost more than my weekly groceries. The kids were dizzy with sugar and laughter, surrounded by shiny new things. My mother was cutting a cake. My father knelt on the floor assembling something electronic that beeped. It was a scene straight out of a commercial for perfect grandparents, only it wasn't love. It was manipulation dressed as affection. They'd never spoiled the kids before, not once. But now, after being cut off, suddenly they'd turned into Santa Claus with a debit card. I stood there trying to recall what it felt like to give them the benefit of the doubt, and couldn't. "We're leaving," I said. The kids protested. "But why?" my mother asked, feigning surprise. "We're leaving now." They didn't understand, of course. How could they? They were being told yes by people who'd built their lives around no. And it felt good. It was supposed to. "Can we keep the toys?" one of them asked, clutching a stuffed bear like it held the answer to everything. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Taking them away would have made me the villain. I wasn't giving my parents that satisfaction. As we walked to the door, my mother called out sweetly, her voice sing-song soft. "They'll come back to us." "They always do." She said it like a prophecy, like a promise, like she still believed she'd win. That night, I didn't wait for some grand emotional revelation. I simply sat on the edge of the bed, looked at my husband, and said, "We need to go." He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. I don't want them near the kids. Not at school, not at the store, not pretending to be harmless down the block. He nodded slowly, as if he'd already made the same decision in his head. "You mentioned North Carolina once," I said. "Your company has an office there. Your parents live there. I wasn't ready before. I am now," he nodded again. "The transfer's still available." "Then let's take it," I said. No drama, no hesitation. Just the quiet resolve to burn the bridge and never look back. I didn't want revenge, just distance, peace, a clean break. Months later, we were in North Carolina. The mountains were breathtaking. The air smelled like pine and second chances. The kids started new schools. His parents, steady, kind, free of drama, lived just 20 minutes away and actually wanted to help. We didn't tell anyone where we'd gone. We blocked numbers, vanished, not in a storm of defiance, but in pursuit of something gentler: safety. One afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. It was a cousin I barely spoke to. "Hey, your mom's worried. She doesn't know where you are. She's really upset. You can't just disappear. Family matters." I deleted the message without replying. Because by then, the truth was simple. We weren't lost. We were free. About 6 months later, life had begun to settle. New routines. New rhythms. The silence no longer felt heavy, just still. And then an email arrived. Subject line, "Emergency. Please read." It was from my sister. I stared at it, tempted to delete it unread. Instead, I opened it. The message was long, frantic, filled with typos. Our parents had been arrested. Again. This time, they hadn't tried to drag anyone else into their mess. No scapegoats, no middlemen, just them, a trunk full of contraband, and a belief that the law was still optional. They'd been caught, of course. The email ended with a plea. They need help. They need a lawyer. Please put the past aside. Their family. I read that line 3 times. Then I hit reply. All I wrote was, "I did show up once. I'm not doing it again." And I meant it. I didn't hear anything for a while. Eventually, news trickled back through the grapevine, because it always does. They'd been charged with possession and attempting to cross the border with controlled substances. Not enough for headlines, but enough to matter. They'd taken a plea deal, 4 years each. It wasn't a lifetime. But it was long enough to sit with what they'd done, if they were capable of that, which I doubted. Now, the part of me that once trembled at the mention of second chances is silent. We have a life here. It isn't flawless, but it's ours. The kids laugh more. My husband sleeps deeply. And I haven't had to turn guilt into silence for a very long time. As for the rest, no, I don't regret my boundaries. Not one bit, but tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe.